So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Great. Next is the approval of the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting as presented.
Second.
Motion been made by Cynthia, seconded by Glenn. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Great, next up, we have public comments. We have plenty of public here. Any comments from our public? Yep, go ahead.
I'm here again. I came the first time in September. I was told I had a zoning issue with the burning issue and the permit not being enforced down there, and I've since then been told, well, I was told it was a zoning issue. I've made every effort, and everything's been blocked by our town administrator. Every time I get a different answer, it comes through the land use administrator. I'm just trying to figure out how I can get to the zoning board and resolve this before problems get worse, and I'm told I'm not allowed to talk to the zoning board, which it's right in the bylaws, it's a public hearing. I know they don't have regular meetings. I don't know where that comes from. The bylaws aren't being enforced, and the permit that was denied isn't being enforced, so if I'm gonna go to the zoning board, I need to know how I can get there, because every time I've talked, I've gotten a different issue, a different answer when I've talked to the land use administrator. So I'm looking for the answer to how I get to visit with the zoning board. I sent a letter, and the land use administrator said that she was told by Nick not to respond to it, and then when I was responding to it, it wasn't really answered. So I mean, I'd like to go address this issue with the zoning board. The state fire warden was here. He said that we should enforce some laws and whatnot, or look into it, and if we can't get to the zoning board and it's a zoning issue, what's my other issue? So that's what I'm asking.
Dan, as the board chair, can you reach out to the zoning administrator and see if we can get some answers on this?
Yes, I will do so.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
How long?
When or how long?
When or how long? You don't know. It's up to Dan, I guess.
Yeah, in his contact with the zoning
Alright.
administrator, yeah.
How long?
Yeah, I would say check
I
back.
will make an effort to get to the zoning administrator this week, and I'm not going to guarantee we'll have answers, but at least I'll make the inquiry and get the process in motion.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, anything else from our public? All right. Next up is new business. The first thing we have is the appointment of someone to the ZBA. Christopher Wehrman, if I'm saying that correct. Hi Christopher, how are you?
Great, thank you.
And, can you just give us a little bit about yourself and why you might want to join the ZBA?
Sure. So my name is Christopher Wehrman. I'm a licensed architect in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina, not yet in Vermont. I have served on planning boards and park and rec boards previously. In my current role at New York State Education Department, I often am involved in variances to the rules. You know, a little bit of a hearing of why the rules are applied and why they can be fine-tuned to fit the particular situation. So we've been here almost 2 years. I have 2 children in Arlington Memorial High School. Just trying to be part of the community and give back and serve any way I can. So I'm open to any kind of planning boards, ZBAs, whatever I can do to help out. So that's me. So I have experience in this, and I just want to help out and serve.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Wehrman by the board?
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to appoint Christopher Wehrman to the ZBA.
I make a motion, but before I do that, Nick, are we appointing him until April?
Yes.
Okay, so the appointment is till April when we reappoint everybody or whatever. So it's, I make a motion to appoint Christopher Werman to the Arlington Zoning Board of Adjustment until April 2024.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Cynthia, seconded by Glenn. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Welcome, and thank you. Next, we have a fire gear change order. Nick, do we have an actual?
So we don't have any documents for this. This was just the matter that was raised in public comment the previous meeting. And I believe the fire department members are here to speak on that. They haven't given me any documents to circulate.
Okay. Is there any members of the fire department that want to speak on it before we go forward?
Yep. Mike King, Arlington Fire Chief. Back in September, I put a quote in front of the Board of Selectmen for $16,607.07 for new turnout gear, coats and jackets, or coats and pants. The Select Board approved the purchase. Shortly thereafter, I got suspended. The Select Board then canceled the purchase. The Select Board then changed the color of the purchase. And then the Select Board then, I think now we're in limbo. Because the company sent me an email that basically said with the original purchase being done in black, the gear being canceled, the gear then being ordered in brown, and then the gear being canceled once again and up in the air, is not the company's fault. At this point, the company Morning Pride is willing to split the costs of $4,100 between them. They'll take a $4,100 loss. The town of Arlington will pay an extra $4,100 because the gear was made wrong because of all the changes that was happening. So that's option number one, and that would go along with our original gear order. Or option number two, they'll take off $500 a set, or per set, which will take off $2,500, and we're stuck with a gear the color that we did not want.
What are you actually requesting?
Well, I'm requesting is, I'm curious, originally this was approved purchase back in September. I placed the order, everything was fine. I then got suspended, then the order got canceled. My number one question is, why did this happen? And then my number two question would be, being it is taxpayer dollars, and the $4,100 would add to the $16,600 and make it $20,000. I guess I'm looking for some input from the Select Board.
Or are you asking the select board to approve the additional $4,100 for black because you want black, or do you want the $2,500 in savings?
Well, on the budgetary side, the $2,500 worth of savings would be great. And I believe the members of the department are willing to do that. But I'm just, like, again, my main number one question is, why did this what ever happened? Why did we get to this point from September until the end of December? Just because I got suspended as the fire chief, everything as far as this gear order and some other things got completely changed in the Arlington Fire Department. So yes, we can save $2,500 and go with the brown, which we actually do have all of it in our closet over at the firehouse. Or we can do the $4,100 extra, which I believe there's still room in the fire department's budget this year.
At the point of the order, the budget is closed, so this is going on next year's budget at this point anyway.
And then that causes another problem. We're already taking a hit out of next year's budget because of this situation. It takes a pretty good chunk of our new equipment money to purchase turnout gear.
And now what just happened is, last year, the end of fiscal year 2022, there was a $38,000 surplus for the fire department. This year, because of the gear purchase, getting all messed up between September and now, there's gonna be another additional $20,000 surplus back to the town at the fire department. It doesn't roll over. This is hurting the fire department. Now we're into our next year's budget already at the tune of about 20,000 bucks. That does not help us at all, with the cost of everything going up.
Yep, Beach, go ahead.
Brian Howler, Arlington Fire. So with this whole mess up, can the select board itself put that back into this year's budget? I mean, why does it have to be closed? I mean, you guys knew it was coming, you had it last time, Dan said that you would have done a special meeting if need be. And like Mike said, so now we're sitting here hurting our budget next year because, so can the select board push that back into this year's budget? We have money left.
So, two ways to do this. One, select board schedules a special meeting to approve just the warrant. So say they make a decision on this right now. We call them tomorrow morning, they give us a bill tomorrow, say during the day. At some point, the select board between now and December 31st gets a bill, has a meeting, approves the warrant, it's in this year's budget. Or we acknowledge that there will be a surplus that stems from the fire budget. And when we get to the budget portion of this evening's meeting, we say, we're going to have a surplus from this year's fire budget, and we're going to raise spending for 1 year to a higher level to account for this. And know that we're going to take the surplus that was in the fire budget and move it into next year's budget de facto, even though these aren't the same physical dollars that are going to be moved around. And there would still be some uncertainty there. But there are two mechanisms through which the select board could act to effectively keep it within this year's budget, or at least make sure that these dollars don't vaporize into cash returned to taxpayers from surplus on hand.
Do we have a fire department equipment sinking fund?
There's not like a sinking fund associated with turnout gear. Turnout gear has been paid for out of the equipment budget, the equipment budget.
But that's an
Historically.
operating
But
budget, that's a year by year.
operating budget.
Yeah.
And there are reasons for that. If we have a set equipment schedule and an associated fund, it can mess up grants for fire act grants. But we could set up a sinking fund into the future, and option C, take the surplus or the amounts from this, put it on the ballot to be put into a sinking fund, and then spend out of that sinking fund effectively after that meeting. So there are options where we could set up a sinking fund that is set, like we're saving $10,000 for turnout gear every year. Every 2 years, we're spending $20,000 on it or something.
I don't think this is a capital equipment, I don't think it's a 20-year item from my
Right,
understanding.
correct.
So I don't think it's appropriate
It
for a
would
sinking
be
fund.
more appropriate to stay in the operating budget.
The only thing I see is if you push that, so you said, you're gonna put that over there, but that all hinges on the voters who have already approved it for this year, right? So if the voters turn it down next year, then we've lost that plus, right, if I'm looking at this right.
Potentially.
It's gonna be a hard year of what's already happened and what we're gonna hear more of tonight. So that's a risk in my eyes, where the voters, myself as a voter, we've already approved this to spend this year, and it was at no fault of us at all that this happened. And I think we're gonna end up with the short end of the stick here because of what happened.
So are you asking the board to approve the $4,100 for the additional black gear?
Well, I show of hands of firemen that are sitting here in the room tonight who would like to order the black gear that we originally thought of. Or do you want to stay with brown?
The headache I know we want the black, but the headache we've already gone through and whatever headache we're gonna go through, they've had 2 weeks to talk about this.
We have the brown in our possession,
We might as well go with the gear we got instead of waiting another 12 weeks for new
but we're
gear.
still, which is fine, if we can go with the brown gear for this year, but I really need this to come out of this year's budget. I can have an invoice for you tomorrow.
I'm willing to have a special meeting. I think there would be a lot to be said for getting the order in and getting it on this year's budget. let's do the brown again and then come back to this and you can try the black. Next year, if, I'm, not fully, I remember the discussion, but, I know there are pros and cons, but at this point, it makes more sense to just go ahead and order order the brown, get the brown done, get it in this year's budget, get the equipment, and then start out and do the black next year. That would be my thought, and I'm willing to meet
So,
anytime.
3 members of this select board, or no, 2 members will be here for the firehouse committee meeting on Wednesday. So we could do a 6:30, 15-minute meeting to approve a warrant on Wednesday. That would be a viable timing.
Is that here?
It's
Right here. I know Glenn and Jamie are on that committee, so, and we'll be here.
I can be here.
Okay, so, yeah, we can do Wednesday at 6:30 for a warrant.
So that would be a special select board meeting to approve that warrant.
Perfect.
And we would have paperwork at that time. We would have an invoice and we have
Mike,
paperwork.
can you just get that to me as soon as you have it?
I agree with that, with Cynthia, and I also agree that, doing so that way would, be cleaner for future audits.
Thank you.
Okay, so the action will be taken on Wednesday night to approve that gear.
Thank you.
Next is our audit results. We have received the audit. I understand that Ron is here with us as well. Welcome.
Where do you want me?
Wherever you want to
Yep.
speak from.
Can I speak here?
Sure.
So I'm Ron Smith. I'm principal with RHI Smith and Company. And this is the first year we've done an audit since, the first year the town's had an audit since 2016. We actually did 2 years, 21 and 22. So a little bit about myself. I've done it for 35 years. Worked with 60 other professionals, so all I've done is live in the world of government. In the state, born and raised in St. Johnsbury, Vermont. Got a family that lives here in town, family member in Arlington, so Vermont's the great state and is always near and dear to me, so it was a pleasure to get back to Arlington to do business as opposed to go turkey hunting. So as far as the town of Arlington goes, I'd probably back up to where we kind of started. Because Nick had reached out through our relationship with the school district, about just coming in here about 3 years ago and just doing a cursory review of what it would take to, to kind of look at it. And some of the things that we saw, in Arlington were old school is probably the best way I can say it. Paper and pencil being used to do accounting, paper and pencil being used to do bank recs, paper and pencil, the old ways, of doing things when you had an accounting software that was certainly more than capable, of doing your business for you. And I would say, going back that 3 years ago and to where you're at, there's been a lot of movement for the path forward to do exactly that. Would probably be a, good way to start here. But more room for improvement to utilize the other 50 to 60% of what your software can do. And certainly with the conversations that I've had, with everybody here, I think that there's that path forward, that there still needs to be a lot of discussion, on how to do that. I think that there's going to be a level of expertise that the town's going to need to do that. We're more than happy to play that sounding board, to the town, to get you, to that path forward. But some of the other things I think is I understand and as I've heard down here through multiple parties is, that there was an error in your assessment in FY22 that put you into a bad math problem, for the town, and we could see how those things could happen, is the best way I can say it. And I think that there's probably some concern from the citizens here and, and how this path forward, what it looks like is what are we gonna do to prevent that from happening? And I think that's a legitimate, justifiable concern, and we're all in to help you do that too. So without getting really into the math here tonight, because I'm not sure that that's the purpose of this meeting, I think one of the things definitely to do is, as you guys are having like a special meeting on Wednesday to take care of this matter and whatever else your budget, have a workshop. Literally so I can show you some of the things you should know sitting in those elected chairs, really, because you're the gatekeepers of the town. Nick executes the wishes of the town, but I think that there's, probably a lot of value to sit in a room for about an hour, put a presentation up on that board, hit probably 8 to 10 pages of the, key pages of those financial statements to really kind of show you what they mean. But if that presentation was up on your board tonight, here's what it would say. You had about $200,000 to your name to run general government in '21. That number will decline to about $110,000 in FY '22. Standards say, and I don't make this up, so the national standards say for the industry is that government should have 30 to 60 to 90 days of its operating budget sitting in surplus to run general government. You've got 10. So that's not a good way to get up in the morning, just realizing how lean and mean you are. I understand, I can't confirm it or deny it in '23 that we raised that tax rate, and that we've been able to put some of that money back, and the hopes are is that money will go to $300,000. So what's that mean? That's probably gonna be representative of about the floor, the $260,000, $270,000, the lowest minimum requirement to there. But I think that that's a good step. And I think that we just make sure that we get the firewalls in place to maintain that forever going forward. So debt-free, or virtually a debt-free town, except for your water department, and about 5 or 6 years ago, the loan that they took out, for that. But the general government in itself, is certainly, absent of lean and mean financially. You really don't have debt to kind of exaggerate, the financial difficulties that you have. So I think you've got something to work with. You don't have a lot, but I think it's more importantly, putting the firewalls in place, understanding the math, understanding that we're gonna end 2023, wherever it is that we land, and I understand that's gonna be like 30 days of surplus, which is 3 times the amount of what you had and where you ended the year before. And I think that that's good news. And Nick and I and Jenna, we're talking really kind of the path forward. We look forward to giving you an audit for '23, by your town meeting, so you can put a report in the town meeting that basically kind of, captures this conversation for '23. And I think that that's more than doable now that we've got 2 years behind us. There was some conversations that I've had with some concerned members, that have a financial background. One was what took so long to do the audit. So I'll raise my hand and take ownership of a big piece of this. I'm my sister's custodian. As I spent a lot of time in South Carolina for many reasons, this past year. And oh, by the way, we hadn't had an audit in 6 years at the town. And you didn't have general fixed assets on your books, and what you gave us with what we worked you isn't what you got back as far as this product goes. So there was a lot of effort that was put into that 21-22 audit so that I can sit here and have this conversation, but literally kind of like starting from scratch and starting with pencil and paper and auditing automation was a big adjustment, to kind of get into the flow of that. But if you were to read that management letter that I think tells the story, of where we were before and where we're trying to go, I have every reason to believe you're doing that. And I think it's more of the assurances, over the next 60 days, that there's that path that you're going to continue to go forward so that you can look the taxpayers in the face and say, hey, we are doing what we can to, one, be transparent, but to deliver better information to you guys so that things like this don't happen going forward. So.
I just want to be sure I was understanding, when you were talking about 30 days, what you have on hand, you're talking about cash on hand because you were calling it surplus, but...
Well, so that brings into another whole, another conversation, that I think would be worthy of a workshop alone. Your books that you gave us were cash basis. What came in and what went out is what was given to us. And certainly there's a lot more, nuances to government. Delinquent taxes was nowhere to be found, so we had to certainly understand that matter and bring your books up to what we call accrual, the whole world.
Right.
What's owed us and what we owe.
I know, but what you just said, I don't understand what you were talking about when you were saying, just let me finish my question. When you were saying we should have a certain amount on hand to run the government, and we haven't had that amount. What were you calling that? What was that?
Surplus, fund balance in our word, unassigned fund balance, net assets. It's basically equity to run the town. And what they say you should have for equity running your municipality is 30, 60 to 90 days of your general fund operating budget. And you don't have that.
general fund operating budget.
So to be clear, this doesn't include sinking funds, fund.
Right, it's
balance,
operating,
fund,
it's
yeah.
operating, it's
Yes.
operating.
And I think a presentation, like I say, would just putting some of the language and the.
Right,
definitions.
you know, I'm sure that would be really good, it's just that, I don't understand, and it would be really good to do that, but because we have a kind of a lumpy flow of revenue, what does it mean to do this?
You have a lumpy flow of revenue because you don't have the cash to stabilize your revenues. That's what it means. So if you're supposed to have 30, 60, 90 days, of equity to run town government, you've got 10. So the reason why you have lumps is you don't have enough cash to mitigate.
No, I got that, but what are you, excuse me?
Sorry.
What are you saying that we should be doing to have that? Or is that what we have
Not
to?
make an assessing error would certainly be a good step.
Yeah, that would be really good. And I would like to know if you actually looked at that situation or if you're just talking about what you heard.
So listen, no, there's a mathematical equation, that I understand the math that set your 22 tax assessment that was discovered during 23. So I don't know what the impact is because the impact of raising.
Okay, so you didn't look at that in particular?
I have not looked at the remedy for that, but I've seen the math problem on what caused that
Okay,
problem. I
okay.
can't speak to how it got cured, okay, so I'm not smart enough to speak about that, but I will be within the next 60 days. But the fact is that you don't have enough cash to run town government right now, and that's the peak and valley of your cash. So what do? You go get a revenue anticipation note or a tax anticipation note to inject cash back in so you can maintain and try to get rid of those lumps. And I understand you have done that subsequent to the audit that we're actually talking about here right now. And I just think a presentation would just be more valuable.
We've always done that, but maybe we haven't
Not in the
gotten
next
enough.
couple of years.
We borrowed from ourselves.
You didn't have any money to borrow this time, though. You had to go to the bank to
Right,
get
right.
additional
I
money.
understand that. But in past years, we have borrowed from ourselves, but it sounds like you're saying we weren't borrowing enough, we didn't have enough cash on hand. We didn't have enough surplus, unassigned fund balance.
Correct, this year. Now, today. You may have it today, but you didn't have it on December 31st, 22, because of the assessing error that was made.
Right,
And you didn't
right.
fix that assessing error until this year, 23.
So it's not gonna show up on our books.
I think a workshop would just be a huge value.
Okay, I mean, I looked at your report, I looked through it. It's very hard to extract concrete guidance other than the regular reports, getting the updates in a timely way, which we have always wanted and have not received, and have yet to figure out a way to be sure that we do receive. So to some extent, you're not telling us anything that we didn't know. But we really need help getting there and having the expertise to back up what we're suggesting to community
I'm all in to
members.
help. All in to help.
Okay. Well, I don't
Mr.
know.
McClafferty, you got a question?
Are you done, Cynthia?
No, I'm not done, but go ahead.
Oh, okay.
No, go ahead. Go, I'll never be done. I'll never be
You'll
done.
jump back in. Steve McClafferty in Arlington. I got a copy of the management letter, just a few questions. Besides the pension entries, which I know are complex, I deal with them on the state level.
They're actually done now. We ran out of power in the state of Maine all day because we got some big issues up in our state right now. So, and I'll tell you, it took me 6 hours to get to Arlington because you couldn't get there easily from St. John's Ware today because of flooding.
So, of all the entries, minus the pension entries, how many of them did you make or suggested to make to our balance sheet for this year?
A lot.
How many were prepared by clients or PBCs?
Prepared by clients, we assisted in helping you all prepare that you took ownership of. All of them. Well, I won't say all of them, many of them.
Okay.
That's why I say what you gave us isn't what you're getting back, is we had to work with certainly Jenna, our primary person, Tiffany providing us information to give you back entries, to work with your clients to update your books.
And like I said, minus the pension ones, like I said, those are complex ones. The GL, I hear you say the general ledger reconciliations were not formally reconciled. How many periods, months
were they not reconciled in a timely basis?
We started with paper and pencil in '21 doing cash reconciliations, and they ended up going on somewhere in '22 into NEMRIC. So to say that that improved is, I think, is a fair statement. That's probably the biggest one. But to give you another example, the general ledger, your trustees of the trust, those are nowhere to be found on your books. So that was an endeavor in itself to gather and understand that information.
Mhm. I just know from my work at the Vermont Veterans Home, yes, we do have pencil and paper to do our reconciliations, and we do, but our system is able to handle our journal entries. So pencil and paper is one thing, but if they're not being reconciled on a timely basis, like we have 15 days, because I got to do entries to our system. You mentioned about deposits. We were unable to in testing some transactions, a flow of deposit information from the accounting records to the bank accounts. So if someone deposited $100, did you only see $85 get into an account?
I would say initially that's a fair statement, but obviously, you know, to satisfy us, there was a lot of work that needs to be done. I'll give you an example. So deposits is a good one to start with paper and pencil. So what you handed us in paper and pencil doesn't necessarily reflect to what and how it got into NEMRIC when it went there, when it got into your software internally, nor did it reflect the timing of the bank deposits when it hit the bank. So there was a lot of work to get to a comfort level.
I mean, how adept is staff at using Excel? Because I run about $22 to $25 million of deposits that we track in Excel before entering it into our system and into the state system.
Yeah, you're hitting kind of like the progression of home where it did get better in 22, 23 through Excel, through sitting down with NEMRIC and understanding how to use their banking reconciliation feature and all the various modules that went with it. We did see improvement for sure from 21 to 22, and we would hope in 23 that there is a lot of improvement.
But is the flow of information, so if I put in that $100 in December 19th, 2023, am I going to see that transferring over to the proper accounts?
Eventually you'll see it in 22 with the progression. So I'm not going to say that it's perfect, but I'm going to say it's a lot better than what we were handed originally.
Well, I'm just saying, when my staff, I have a variance in my deposits, I go to my staff and say, what the heck happened?
Yeah.
My payroll entry was off $9,000. What happened? Oh, it was a workers' comp that we should not have picked up. Great. I understand that, charge it back to the state. Those are when you get into, transactions that are, like 4 or 5, well, I'll say about $4 million a month. You get into the nitty gritty, and that's what personally, I'm reading this and I wasn't getting the warm fuzzies yet. That's personal opinion. So, thank you very much for answering my questions.
Mr. Keelan.
Ron, is it fair to say that the financial statements that the town was giving internally, was looking at themselves, were not the statements that you finally came out with?
Correct. What you gave us is not what you got.
So the reports that the town board that governs this town were getting over the last 2 years were not what we're seeing now in this financial.
I'd say that's a very fair statement, and certainly talking with Nick and Jenna, they wanted to bring that information from cash basis, to accrual basis, so the whole picture you could see.
And it's one of the things we've been working with the town board on over the last few months, that the town report that came out in March had errors in it that had the town picked up in December. If they had the time and if they were getting the reports, which we understand the town doesn't get, but the town board doesn't get timely reports. Could have avoided the disclosure in August of the major tax.
I think that absent of really, and I understand what your town reports are, and I've read them thoroughly, before those numbers even get into those town reports, there was flaws in the information, and I think that management letter depicts the path home to correct some of those flaws.
let me move on from there, because I think everyone knows that now, that the data, the data the town was getting was not accurate for them to manage the town. And we also understand, and we hope that it comes out of this workshop, will be the type of reports the town board should be getting in order to help them manage the town. The point you made about the cash, the fact that the town did not have surplus cash, every nonprofit organization, most nonprofit organizations, hospital is a good example, they measure their cash on a daily basis, that they have 240 days worth of cash available to run their business. And it's a critical data point. But can I, on page 20 of your report, which is on the water company, we have assets of $2,471,000. And we have liabilities of $3,151,000. That to me shows that we have, that entity, if it is an entity, I'm not quite sure it is or not anymore, is insolvent.
So I think if you look about 4 numbers down, you're gonna see a negative investment in fixed assets, and that certainly is a problem, Don. You
Yeah,
know,
670.
It's a problem we've had a lot of conversation about, so.
Just for the record, you're right, the negative number is $679,000.
Correct.
And that's in the business world, or any nonprofit world, anywhere else, or even in your personal life, when your liabilities exceed your assets, you're insolvent.
I'm gonna use a different word. I use sideways to Nick and Jenna, you know, when I was having the conversation, meaning it's definitely not north of 0, which is where we need it. And the analogy that Don's referring to is simply this. When you go buy a car and you drive it off the parking lot, you spend $50,000 for that car, it's $45,000 just as soon as you get in that car, turn the key and drive it off. And I would argue a similar thing happens here with your water department. You spent $4 million about 6 years-ish ago for an upgrade, and that gradually reduces when those pipes go in the ground and all the other infrastructure that you put on that. That gradually over the 5 or 6 years called depreciation goes down in value too. So that's the inference that I make called sideways, is it's the same analogy as driving that car off the parking lot. And that's why you'll see a comment also in that management letter about a capital plan. That's something that you definitely, that could help mitigate it, but I think you got some work to do, to do that. And that's why we put the comment in there, is because your enterprise fund, certainly, I'm not gonna use the word insolvent, it's a taboo word for me to use in 35 years, so I have every confidence it can be fixed, but the first thing to do is to bring light of the situation and deal with it, and that's what I think the workshop would certainly help with, for sure.
Cynthia?
So, well, we gotta do the workshop, but the asset value that you have, that's based on depreciation, or is it based on the income earning potential of the assets?
There's a mathematical formula that we use in this profession, and it looks like this. It's cost minus depreciation minus debt service. And that's why your net investment in fixed assets is below 0 at $600,000 or $700,000, as Don uses. That's the mathematical equation that our profession gauges, so that we can tell whether or not your enterprise funds or any other governmental fund is profitable is not a good word. Solvent, you're using the word solvent, that's a better word. I don't like to put the in front of it, because I think it's curable, but that's a mathematical equation. Cost minus depreciation minus debt service gets you to that math.
However, my understanding is that we are covering the cost of the water department and we are paying back the debt. Is that not correct, Nick?
Yes, we
Okay.
are, and it is being covered by revenues, but whether those revenues are enough to cover the depreciation and the long-term investments that need to be made in this department and future capital expenses.
Correct.
Is something that, I am familiar with the capital plan that was not particularly well followed in the 5 years or so of the past. But certainly, it would be helpful for other members of the board, at least the liaison, to sit down with me with that capital plan book, which is a
Right.
book that we paid to have produced from
Right.
the bond.
Right.
So there is a bunch of information, and it may be that that picture is rosier than this is, but no matter what the picture is, we all need to understand the capital position of the water department and the long-term obligations of the ratepayers to make sure that this water system has the capital it needs to make sure it can do the repairs in the long run.
No, absolutely, and that's why, and I totally agree about, looking at this in the workshop and looking at that capital plan. I just think that the statement that it's sideways or that it's insolvent or whatever, because of the way you depreciate the infrastructure, is a very important way of looking at it, but I think it's important for people to know that we are covering our costs and operating that department, and no property tax dollars are going into that. And one of the reasons why this is really important is that the town is currently looking at wastewater systems and the possibility of developing those kinds of systems as part of our public works department going forward. And there's a question as to whether those would be freestanding departments, self-financed and cut off from property taxes or not. So there's going to be a lot of accounting issues there. So I think that it really behooves us not just to look at the water department in terms of this accounting analysis and the capital plan, those kinds of things, but to bear in mind these questions as we contemplate the wastewater systems.
And I didn't know anything about the wastewater, really, as far as my comments were purely what I...
I understand that. I'm just highlighting this issue for the community and for the board.
Well, I'm going to highlight this. I've looked into the crystal ball for the water department, and what we're forgetting is the fact that the bond principal payments were deferred, your amortization costs were deferred, so now those things start hitting your books now. That's going to cause a problem in your water department. And I'm looking into the crystal ball, I'm already seeing it, right now. So currently, when you look at 21, 22, that note was set up, in a way to defer some of those costs to allow the town to better understand its delivery of its service. COVID happened. Okay, they waived your principal payments during COVID. So it's not fair to say that that thing is, and again, I'm not using the word insolvent, but it's not fair to say that the current rates are making it work right now, because I'm not here to say that. I'm here to say the opposite. I think you've got a problem right now, and I think you're going to have a problem in 2 years as you start making those debt payments now that you obligated this town to do, and we hope we can do it without using taxpayer dollars. I'm all in to help. And guess what? Now's the perfect time to do it, because with the Build Back America rate package, again, that our president signed into law, 21 it got initiated, August of 23 got signed into law, there are millions, billions of dollars getting put into public infrastructure. So now's the time to look at all of those things, for sure.
And for the board's position, we should think about the fact that we expect to be booking about $100,000 in ARPA investment that will be the South Road project, that will be assets on our books net positive at the very beginning of their depreciating life in the next 2 to 3 years, to just get that water department into where it needs to be on a compliance basis. But we'll talk about that when we have our ARPA discussions in January. But one thing that we know was we're almost certainly going to be paying for out of those ARPA funds is this compliance work that will put $100,000 onto the books of the water department in assets.
And that's really where I think we can put some paper, to visual about when I say the word sideways, deficit cash flow, it'll be obvious in 2024, 25, and 26.
None of this is obvious.
It will be when I get done with it.
I doubt it.
Excellent.
Yep, Mr. Keenan.
Cynthia's point is right. The water company is paying for itself on an operating basis. My point is a very simple one, and you often see this in organizations. When you take depreciation, especially in a nonprofit, you fund it. You actually set cash aside for that. We don't have that in the water company, right?
No, I got that.
And as a result,
I got that.
there's the debt, the amount of money we owe, exceeds the net book value of the asset by a substantial amount, $679,000. Had we been lucrative and had cash on hand, we would have been able to fund that depreciation. And now when we have capital improvements that we're going to definitely need, we can go out and fund it with the cash we have. Very much, the analogy is very much like you do with a fire truck. you set money aside every year, so when that truck comes due, you have the cash there to pay it.
So that's really interesting. So in a sense, you're saying that when you put the new pipes in the ground, you immediately start putting money aside to cover the depreciation of those pipes, and that becomes a fund to use for more pipes. That-
Ideally,
Okay.
if you can do it.
If you can do it.
Replacement of other pipes, not more.
Other pipes,
And then
different
the other
pipes.
thing that we're forgetting too is maintenance. That's another whole separate conversation. That's why I say I'm looking down in my crystal ball on a $4 million project, adding about 4% of an average to maintenance. Come up with the math on how building that into your rates as well.
We have a very interesting conversation, to say the least, at our January water board meeting, when we go to approve that budget. But some of those things are gonna be built, have to be built into this on a preliminary basis. And revisiting the capital plan in advance of that meeting will be something I will be doing, and any members of the board who would like to meet with me to look at those capital assets and stare into this crystal ball of future of the water department. Well, I'm all ears and my time's available.
And I'm interested in wastewater. That was I did not know that, and I'm all in to certainly listen and understand that more.
Yeah.
And when we talk about the wastewater.
Well, it's all just planning. That's all, it's all just a planning stage.
Mr. James?
I'm gonna waive everything else. The report is 82 pages that we have from Ron's company. Plus it's other supplemental reports. Until we have this workshop, I think it'll be more effective. But I think the board should recognize the wonderful assistance the firm was given by Jenna.
Yes.
Because when you heard what Ron said, when the statements that they got initially were not the statements we now have, someone had to help out.
She was huge. And 22, just so for the record, you'll have 22. Like I said, if we would have had internet this afternoon, 22 would have been there, and there'd be no highlights on that with the pension fund. We have all that information, it's all been updated. So you'll have 22, I understand, tomorrow or Wednesday morning. So let us get power back.
Any other questions for Ron? Anything else from the board? Ron, and Jenna, thank you very much for preparing this. I greatly appreciate it. I think the board greatly appreciates it. And I absolutely look forward to scheduling a workshop ASAP.
Yeah.
I'll send you an email after the meeting, probably tomorrow sometime.
The more that we can understand every piece of this and moving in the future, I think we'll.
What may be good, I'm just thinking out loud, March town meeting, maybe you set your budget when, early February, first week of February?
Sooner.
It'll be
We'll have it
probably
done
end of
in
January.
End of January, maybe that town, maybe that workshop right around then, so we can put 23's information in front of you, so we can talk like reality here, where you are now.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
thank you all.
All right, next up we have budget 2024 discussions.
Okay. So, dispensing with, so I'm going to start, so this, we're gonna do it just like I did, like we did the previous week. And I'm just gonna go through more or less line by line of the changes. You all have current budgets in front of you for the actuals. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to take those this week. So, some important top lines. I'm gonna start at the end and then I'll to note the top line and then work back. That factoring in all of the stuff that is going on in this budget, it is currently set as, or expected to be, a net spending increase of less than $5,000. So that,
From 23 to 24.
From 23 to 24, and that does not account for revenue changes. I don't expect revenues to be changing in any meaningful way. I haven't recalculated the fire department share of for Sunderland and Sandgate and things like that. I don't expect the kind of substantial revenue side adjustments like we have in previous years, like when we moved water payments from off of our books that removed a $30,000 non-tax revenue, things like that. So at the very core of this is a pretty straightforward by-the-book budget that simply adjusts lines on the spending side, which the mandate we have is to control spending this year, so we are controlling spending this year. So on payroll side, we made various adjustments to insurance. I'll flag in there that I'm no longer not taking the cell stipend in '24, so I have that rebudgeted after pulling it out in '23. We've adjusted some of these communication services lines and
Why does that go down, the insurance line?
there was a net reallocation within the insurance. Insurance is more or less a wash as a whole. Our total insurance rate costs changed by $50 or so. But there was a substantial reallocation of insurance costs.
Oh, from the town hall to the other things?
From town hall to
Okay.
to other things.
Okay.
To reflect changing, like, makeup of our employees and
Okay.
and equipment and things like that. So things you'll notice. Slightly higher expenses associated with the clerk's office because we're in an election year. Readjustments, or adjustments of land use labor to account for the increase in cost. That is a cost controlling option that if the board wants to place some more limits on how much land use labor we're putting in. We've radically increased that, those costs in the last couple of years, but to reflect our current year usage, I increased it about $1,000. Something very important is and one of the big cost savings in this budget is that there's a approximately $8,500 decrease in recycling fees. The household hazardous waste facility in Bennington came in under budget on an operating basis and under budget on the construction basis. So this reflects a one-time refund payment that will be in the '24 budget. We won't receive it before the end of the year, and then the costs of the facility are about $4,000 lower than we were previously budgeting for all the 3 hazardous waste events. So the facility is working and it's saving us money, and it's saving us some other money elsewhere.
Now, will that cost
That cost
will go up, yes,
$4,000
in the future? Okay, that's fine, that's fine. But it's down this year and that's good.
But we're no
Yeah.
longer paying for the construction
Right,
costs.
right.
So we got some other, county taxes are up. Another major cost savings, we're not making substantial investments in our computer expenses next year. I think that where we are at on a technology basis is a great place. We have plenty of money for an emergency where we have a technology meltdown in the CRF computers right now. And the operating budget for computers is unchanged, so we will have enough money to buy a couple of basic machines to do the work, the technology expenses that we have.
For your plan for computers, how often do you refresh them?
I am moving to a approximately 3-year replacement cycle, and we have about 7 or 8. Our number of computers is I think 12 total in the government. So we buy refurb, used machines that so that we can buy on the used market now that the used market is pretty well developed. So the wiring in this building is all brand new for the most part for our computer wiring, so I don't see long-term capital expenses on the computer side. And I intend on operating, funding these out on an operating basis because this CRF was created for things like wiring, and we had previously thought about moving to using the CRF as more of a substantial mechanism. Computers don't last 20 years, we shouldn't be funding them out of CRF. So it reflects a different strategy from where I was in previous years about intending on funding this in advance. So that completes the town hall budget. I kept the changes pretty minimal. I did not change, for instance, the maintenance lines in case we are floating money for the MERC program that I report on pretty much every meeting in my report. Some basic adjustments to the fire department, insurance costs to reflect our lower listed membership. Dispatch goes back in. I tweaked down the maintenance budget because we had increased it on a one-off basis a couple of years ago because truck 75, which was the truck we replaced, started to incur a ton of expenses. But tweak that down just a little bit, and then reflect the rest of it. But it's a pretty limited change in the fire department budget. cemetery budget, we need to put a little bit more into operating, into operating maintenance. We're getting storm damage at Evergreen on a regular basis now. We need to have a couple $100s into that budget for some cleanup work. Park, Willie here to answer any questions. This reflects a reallocation of labor expenses to account for his 5-month spend in the highway department on labor, along with his health insurance costs. So we made adjustments to taxes and FICA and pensions and the labor lines and health insurance lines to account for that. We've adjusted the insurance rates. You'll see that there are certainly things that have gone up in insurance, and then made some other basic adjustments like our trash pickups previously were not keeping up with our trash usage in the park, so we increased that budget to account for expenses. And then we put in a new improvement line. This is something that I think is important for the park in the long run. We need to have a line on which to budget actual physical infrastructure investments. And in this case, we're budgeting for the wash pad that we previously discussed for lawnmowers. That will improve his productivity and improve his quality of life and improve his safety. So that this budget's for that on a new line and pull some of this funding from the equipment line that has been dropped as an offset because we're not buying greens mowers and lawn mowers and things like that this year. We're not buying a golf cart this year. So, yes.
Could you just clarify, if we're gonna have a new line, I remember the wash pad, I'm fine with the wash pad, but what other kinds of things would go in that line?
That would be like, say, new benches. Fields and grounds improvements could include new seating. Or other things like that.
Would it be like new sprinkler systems for the golf course?
And I think that's something we're gonna talk about as funding out of ARPA. That was something that came out of conversation.
No, I didn't mean specifically that, but I just wanna know what you're talking about.
Could go on that if we decided to fund on that.
I mean, obviously, you're not gonna get, that's very small, but.
On this equipment purchase line, because it's equipment as well. But I kinda like this line as a functional mechanism for us, that if we're doing things that don't feel like they're maintenance, if we're buying new stuff, there's not a place to buy new stuff that's associated with fields and grounds, whereas a lot of our quote-unquote new stuff may be under that. If we decide to repurpose an area of the fields and grounds, we need to have a place to budget for that behavior that is not maintenance. I'm kind of thinking that as a general matter, we may be overusing quote-unquote maintenance lines when we don't have, for things that are more new equipment. So it's
like when we got the new netting for one of the diamonds, that was repairs or replacement,
yes.
right?
Yeah,
so that would not be in here.
In the budget is a repairs line that is unchanged.
Okay. So these are just the changes.
These are just the changes.
Okay. Jamie, does this make sense to you? This categorization?
Yeah, I see it. I got to go through this budget a little bit more. I didn't have quite enough time because Willie and I had a really good meeting. We brought up a lot of different things that need work, and it's going to take some money to get things where they need to be down there. So I just want to make sure that everything that not everything that we talked about, but a bunch of that stuff is included in this budget. So
well, and I think the improvements line is a useful line, and some years we might not fund it because we don't have those kinds of things. But I think it makes sense for things like for something like the wash pad, certainly. So
you
let's
talked
give it a
about
shot.
benches, and I know Willie's had conversations with the Lions. About doing some benches and some pads down there for the beach area and stuff like that.
Okay.
So,
super.
Oh, and while we're on this, let's take a moment to thank Mr. Toth and the Lions Club for the $1,000 donation they gave to us. That was in my report, and I do want to take a moment to thank you for the contributions. It really means a lot to us.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
and we've got to spend already.
So excellent. And because the town's expected to end on a surplus, I'm going to put that into the CRF parking, park improvement, or park equipment, to save for some future, projects like that. And so, I'll quickly gloss over the highway stuff. I know we talked about it last time, but I have final numbers from that includes health insurance allocations and labor allocations, in the highway department. So, Willie's labor appearing in healthcare appearing in the, lines for the highway department at the appropriate amounts. And then we made adjustments to the various insurances, within that. So that at the bottom, as said at the beginning, sets a net spending increase across the entire government, including labor, including this substantial healthcare change, and factoring in the fact that healthcare costs did go up 10%, and we're still keeping it to this number. So I am happy with where the budget is, and I welcome any adjustments to the budget from where we're at. We'll have opportunities when the budget is final, with the final actuals in January, to make decisions with more finalization or finality. But I believe that this accounts for the mandate of what the voters gave us this year, which is keep spending increases to as minimal as we possibly.
So, right now, we have a situation where the net increase in spending is about $5,000, and you're referring to things you did at last meeting, which of course I missed. Was there a decision made about raises, or what?
We have not talked about
Okay, so in fact,
compensation whatsoever.
all we have, this is just
This is-
totally preliminary, totally tentative, is not where we're gonna be.
It figures out, it could be. In a year like where we're at, the board's gonna have to think long and hard about labor costs. And that's something that you should be chewing over throughout the holidays.
Right, and this does not include those,
Unlike
that's a
previous
separate
years,
discussion.
You're not staring at
That's
a
right.
year where non-wage compensation tax increases are substantial. This is, what we're delivering is going into the conversation on compensation, that we're keeping, that this is a tax increase of less than 1/6 of 1 point. So, I don't know, this is, but notably, this.
So the short answer is this does not include any wage increases yet.
Yes.
Mr. King.
We'll go back up to the fire department
Yep.
one there. We talked about cutting maintenance from 45 because we got rid of the old truck. Well, we still have 3 old trucks. I think, and one, I would hope that the fire department officers, whoever they may be for the next year's budget, get some input on the fire department budget, which they have not done in the past 3 years. The budget's basically just been handed to us with no meetings, no consent, no nothing. But as far as even attempting to cut a maintenance budget, that maintenance doesn't just cover trucks, that maintenance covers SCD8 maintenance, that maintenance covers tires, that maintenance covers equipment maintenance, equipment repairs, parts and pieces, chainsaw chains, everything. I don't agree with that personally.
Okay.
I'm happy to entertain any increases. This is still $2,000 more than it was 2 years ago.
John, you had something?
Okay, where's the audit fee budget?
So that is being paid out of a CRF that was established some years ago, and like last year, it still has sufficient funding to pay for next year's audit. I intend on bringing that back on budget once that fund is mostly exhausted and no longer relevant. That fund was built up with a degree of unintentionality in the past, where surplus from some location of the government, I don't know exactly where it was, created a CRF that had about $90,000 in it at peak. So for this budget, this current 21, 22, 23 audits will be paid for out of that CRF as we work to draw down a no longer relevant CRF. within the mandate of the CRF.
Is there any way that could be noted, because
Yeah.
25, if this thing is wound down, that's gonna be a big shocker.
Oh, yeah. I can absolutely note that.
Yeah, because I get it, you did a 2 years audit there, and there's a lot of work you had to do. 23 should be, would say, simpler audit. The only thing that my concern is, there are a lot of things in that management report that have to be implemented. Yep. And that's not gonna be cheap if he's gonna be doing that work.
Yep.
So I think you may not want a shortfall, what may hit you next year on that.
That's really valuable. Thank you.
Any other questions about the budget?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to speak and kind of carry what Mike was saying about the maintenance budget. And this is, just so he's not the only one saying this, we do have 3 older trucks, one of which is our command vehicle, personnel carrier, which is basically falling apart. And it would be nice to have a vehicle to go to Manchester for trainings, to use as a transport, so we don't have to use our own personal vehicles. Keegan and I, going to Fire 1 and 2, put, about 5,000 miles on our own personal vehicles.
Well, maybe more than that between the two of us, between each vehicle,
For a
total wise.
volunteer basis. And neither of us would have felt comfortable driving that vehicle the distance we were. Just take a look at it, the rocker panels are rotting right off of it, and there's no talk of replacing it.
I mean, we put money into it 1 minute, and the next thing it's, something else is wrong with it.
I mean, let's go to West Station, 7.7, it's just as old and just as tired as 7.5 was. So.
There's a really good case to be made here.
I mean, we're kicking things down, what happens if that truck blows its tank tomorrow?
I mean, between labor costs, parts costs, tire costs, working up Sunderland now, I know that it's hitting hard. Prices are way more than what they were 2 years ago.
Okay, remind me which vehicle this is.
Well, the vehicles that don't need attention are utility/command vehicle 710. That doesn't really need attention, that needs replacing, but that's sinking fund budget. The West Arlington truck we have now does have pump issues, and we don't know what they are.
But when you say utility command vehicle, what does that
It's
mean?
the SUV.
It's the SUV, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not a fire truck.
No.
Well, it's still a piece of fire.
I understand that, but it's not a fire truck.
Yeah, this is not a $100,000 expense. This is we could pay for that kind of thing if and this is the kind of thing where if the board gives the fire department mandate to bring us a proposal on that, and if you see a vehicle that is the vehicle that you think is the right deal, well, we should the board would be would
Wait a minute. I mean, I'm willing to look at any budget proposals or proposals for vehicles. My recollection is we bought that used. I could be wrong about
we
that.
should be looking for a good used vehicle to replace that if we can find one.
Well, I did present last year, I gave to the town a brand new 3/4 ton 4-door truck with a cab, with a pull-out, a truck to replace truck 710. I got the quote from Springfield GMC, I went to Big Boys Toys, I got a price on a cap, and I got a price on the pull-out drawer, so when you open the tailgate, the drawer pulls out. I presented that to the town last year.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, especially, we need a bigger truck. That enclosed trailer with that Rhino in there, it's not
We
one.
end up pulling the trailer with our personal vehicles, which I don't think is right.
Because it just throws that truck around like it's nothing.
The utility 710, the SUV, is definitely on its way out. It was purchased used for $3,500. Got a Jamie, what, it was 7 years ago?
We got our money.
Quite a while ago.
I mean, it was a.
We wanted to see if a vehicle like that would work for us.
Right, and it does.
It does. It just needs to be updated.
Yeah.
But that one carries water rescue, It carries our highway sign packages, it carries AED. Sometimes when we get called to be first responders of the rescue squad, if somebody at the firehouse, they'll run that because everything's in it. It's not just a personal vehicle, or a personal carrier vehicle. It does have, it is a fire truck, but it's not a pumping water fire truck.
Right.
It's in our capital plans for a reason, and it's in our capital plans to be replaced within the next 2 years for this very reason. We've identified this as a problem.
But it doesn't have its own sinking fund.
No, it's paid for out of the CRF fire trucks. So, and that's part of the long sheet, 50-year long spreadsheet that I have that maps out the arc of fire department spending. And speaking to that arc of fire department sinking fund spending, if the board feels it is appropriate, that sinking fund, if there are sinking funds that are going to need a incremental increase, that sinking fund wasn't set to be increased for another couple of years, but if the board sees fit, that would be an opportunity to add to this spending in a long-term sustainable way that helps our cash accounts and helps us look at the future in a way that adding operating expenses doesn't. So certainly, if you are to change things, to add things to this budget, that's a really good low-hanging fruit choice. If you another
What are you
low-hanging fruit,
talking about? What are you talking about?
if
Low-hanging fruit adding to the budget, what are you talking about?
there's nothing low-hanging about adding to the budget, but
You just used that expression.
yes, but if there is a high value add, less low-hanging fruit, that was not the correct metaphor, but that is a relatively high value add that speaks to the future.
Putting money in the sinking fund.
Right, and setting the expectation with taxpayers that the costs of fire trucks are going to go up such that we know that we need to have more buffer and more play in the fire department budget over the long course of history. Over the course of 10 years,
I totally
a $5,000
understand.
increase at
Right.
adding up to $50,000 a lot.
I understand what you're talking about, but I can't contemplate any of those increases until I know where we are at the end of the year. God willing, we actually have financial reports that tell us that.
Yes.
And I can't contemplate wage increases, I can't contemplate fire trucks until we have that information.
And that is why when we moved our budget process to December instead of January like we normally would, that was gonna be one of the growing pains. That's why this is ultimately a preliminary meeting. I wanted to make sure that we had this framework.
Right, and it's good. No, and I understand that, but it's good to talk about different possibilities, and I really value the input of the fire department about their priorities in terms of the maintenance and the vehicles. But until we get those final numbers, it's just discussions.
Yeah.
We have to have the numbers in terms of the money, where we are at the end of the year, before we can make these decisions.
Just as some numbers, and I know we're not at this point. Again, I would like, before any fire department budget goes anywhere, that the select board meet with at least the chief officers on our budget.
I would like to see, I remember we would always have the fire department in one night, and you would have a list of your desires, and so I would like to do that.
Say like this year, something, some you may know, some you may not know. In the year 2024, every single cab and chassis, doesn't matter which company or if it's commercial or custom, there's a $40,000 increase in the Build Back Better exhaust systems. Fire trucks right now, build times are 5 years. So per se, the truck down in West Arlington becomes a money pit. Or needs to be replaced sooner than 33 years, we're gonna wait 5 years from the day the town finally says, okay, you can purchase it.
And it'll be falling apart during those 5 years.
We'll be out of a truck.
Right.
We will be down a truck, so
Right.
we won't be meeting the ISO ratings. We
Right.
won't be providing a proper fire code. This is why I would love for the fire officers to come and have those meetings again when it comes budget time.
Steve?
Just one thing, I would hope the select board come January 1, if that vehicle that you're talking about craps out at 2 o'clock in the morning, as you guys are out on a call, that you would post haste look at something to get it replaced in a reasonably short period of time, less than with the time period for the turnout gear, what I hear, but something, quickly within like a couple of weeks.
That is.
And then follow up what you had, Cynthia, I agree. Budget to budget is one thing. You should be having actual numbers in there, so I know where you are at. So you have informed decisions.
Nick, are we any closer to getting actuals?
We'll have our actuals for the first meeting in January. But we can't have actuals until we have our.
No, we have to
year-end
finish the
goals.
year. We gotta finish the year.
But yeah,
Understood, understood.
Yeah, so we'll have those at that first meeting, at which point the budget will be the top of the agenda, alongside a couple of other little items that we'll be talking about in the future.
Yeah, because I mean, this looks really tight. It really does,
Yeah.
Nick. But we need to understand
Yeah,
that
and
this is
and
just preliminary, you know,
it's
it's like.
both a preliminary budget, but importantly, I want the board to know that to create this preliminary budget, we are taking some of the play out of the budget. Some of the give in this budget to account for, say, a $10,000 rebuild of Black Hole Hollow Road this year. Or a substantial increase in our health insurance costs due to staff change mixes. Or things like that. We do not have a.
So there's no give, there's not
there
as
is
much
not a
give,
lot of
because we've
give
already given it.
So to make sure that this budget is this tight budget where we're at, going into the year, we need to know that it may be appropriate to add spending elsewhere in the budget to account for some of that. There is still some, and there's going to be other spending and we'll have ARPA spending next year that'll offset some of these equipment expenses and things like that. So there are other things in play here, but this is just the property tax budget. Base budget. So it's on a preliminary basis, this is what we got. I appreciate any and all feedback going into the next meeting. And we'll have actuals at that one with the giant normal spreadsheet that you guys are all used to at budget time.
Anything else? John?
Two things. First thing, do you have a capital plan for next year?
Yes.
Of what you're planning, but, and does it also have how it's planned to be funded?
I can share you the capital sheets and,
Okay.
But yeah, I don't see
Because
Yeah.
this is great, you know, okay,
Yeah.
I only increased 5,000, but then you've got the big ticket items, capital, which are the ones that usually ding you. So
Yeah, but we have sinking funds for most of those.
that's why I asked if I could see how you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, no, we have it, sinking funds, and there's a spreadsheet like how much you're putting in each year, and then when you buy it, and then how much you're putting, that kind of stuff.
Now,
Yeah.
last time I was here though, you guys said you borrow from those sinking funds.
We do borrow from them in anticipation of taxes,
Okay.
and so we need to be careful about which fund we borrow from.
Is there anything that shows or control that says, I have taken 20 out of here to use for this?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then.
And we have a
to show
formal
the
motion.
replenishment.
Also for no, last year we did not borrow from a bank.
Okay,
Yes.
And we pay interest to ourselves when we do that.
okay, just.
But no, it's all documented, we have a motion and everything like that.
Second thing, I know you have the budget, which every company does. I mean, I'm on Nick, I
Yeah.
feel your pain because I'm on my 10th iteration of my 24 budget coming up because things change daily. But during the year, do you guys ever, I know you've got your set budget, but do you guys ever reforecast? Just because of things happening during the year that you don't know in December or January. I mean, all of a sudden, April, a big event would come along. So you at least could say, okay, I've got a $40,000 item that it's not in my budget. Where can I get it from? I mean,
Oh, yeah, I mean, if something comes up, we absolutely do that.
but is there a formal process where you guys actually maybe halfway through the year say, this is where we're going?
We can change the budget through motions and decisions of the board. We can't get more tax dollars. I
Oh,
mean,
no, that's
you
what I'm
know,
saying.
and so we know what.
What is that
that's-
public knowledge
Yeah.
for us
Yeah.
to take a look at?
No-
and see?
Nothing can be moved without a formal vote.
Yeah, yeah.
In order for one thing to be moved from one line to another, it requires a formal vote.
And there could be
Check the
changes,
order type thing.
there could be changes in what the state's doing in terms of the highway budget or highway funds. I mean, Irene, that was a mess, you know, and now we had COVID and, you know, these things are
So
happening.
And there are a
And so-
couple of lines that are built into the budget. Primarily, one thing that's a lot, like the easiest place to note this is, say, our line that covers highway road washouts. There were building line in class 3 roads. That is funded at a rate of currently $35,000 per year, and that's the just in case line.
And that's a sinking fund.
And no, that is a operating fund.
That is an
account,
operating fund, okay.
And that pays for two things: natural disaster and mud season gravel to rebuild the roads in mud season. And there's a couple of $1,000 in mud season gravel that are characterized as this to keep the roads open work efforts, and then I try to keep enough money in to rebuild about 200 yards of road wholly from scratch. That is approximately what it costs. That's my interpretation of what they've historically had it at. It has historically been at that $35,000 number for a number of years. But if we're expecting more, if we wake up
Might
tomorrow,
have to go up. Yeah.
we might need to go in. And
Let's
increase
call my
that
mother and
more.
see what the Batkill's doing. Okay?
I checked it right before this meeting, and
It's in my backyard.
I have photos to document it in case things wash away in the morning. But certainly, that may be due for some increase, acknowledging that the state offsets 92% of the costs associated with this kind of disaster.
And also that some of the
Disaster.
improvements in infrastructure, like culvert sizes and other things, will help to mitigate some of the washouts that we used to have.
There's grant things that are not, like, I didn't go and forecast grant lines, but there's grant work that goes into improving the roads so they don't wash out and things like that. But, yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I could see the capital.
Yeah, I'll send-
Just so I get an
Yeah,
idea
I'll
of how
send
you
you that.
guys operate.
And you might have an idea, how to do it better.
Any feedback on this is gonna be appreciated. We have 3 capital sheets: fire, non-fire, and park, and I'll send you all 3 of those.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions about the budget? Willie is here. Thank you for your time. Is there any questions for Willie about the park while he's here?
Or your chairs? Not formal, just.
What's on the way out?
On the way out? Okay, guess not.
Any questions for Will?
Turned to the golf course with a swimming pool today.
Yeah.
It wasn't me.
That blowers will be available on Thursday, if anybody's around.
Give me a call. I'll be around.
Willie, I'd like the public to thank you for the work you do down there. The place is beautiful, and you do a fantastic job. You had a very tough year this year with rain, to say the least, but you still kept up, so good work on that.
And the reviews from your work in the highway department is positive so far, so thank you for the willingness to work in the highway department.
All right, next, we have an executive session.
Let's do the letter from the waste
All right.
before we go into the executive session. That'll be added.
Okay, I have a highway issue. When can I bring that up?
All of the business.
We'll do it number 9, all other business.
Okay.
Okay, we have a wastewater investment division letter here. Has everybody had a chance to read that? Would you like me to read it into the record?
We can copy paste it if you want to see it at the time.
I don't really want to read the entire thing in the record, but I will if I have to.
And this is about trying to get the report.
Yeah, it's, at the wastewater meeting, 2 weeks ago, it was suggested that we send a formal letter saying, here's our next meeting, could you please give us an update? And we understand things are challenging up in Montpelier, which things are now even more challenging up in Montpelier. And could you please make sure we get this portion of the work done so we can get reimbursed for our money?
It's also holding up moving forward.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
So
We'll entertain a motion to approve the letter as written.
I will make that motion to approve the letter.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Again, motion made by Jamie, seconded by Cynthia. Discussion on it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay. So we do have an executive session scheduled. Do you want to push that to the end and let's get?
Yeah, let's do everything else.
Okay. Is the board comfortable with that?
Yes.
All right, next will be the report of the town administrators.
Yeah.
It was in your packet for review. You want to hit highlights, Nick?
Yeah, I'll hit some highlights. We got some grant reporting done, we got a Better Roads grant out the door. I'm looking forward to getting awarded that, because I think we have a really competitive application. That'll fund 5 new culverts on River Road on the western segment. There was various legal work and other preparatory work for the future, as well as follow-up work on matters to close out the audit and things like that. So, so that's a summary. Does anyone have any questions?
Okay.
Look good to me.
Next is warrants and orders. Are they there in the hard copy?
Okay, the first one is to MSK Engineers for the bridge study payment. We don't have the report.
It's still early in the report if you look at the task listing. Ultimately, we are still making the incremental payments as they work through, make progress on a percentage basis, and this is another increment where they have made progress. And
Did you guys pay the other one
yes,
last meeting?
that was paid at the last meeting.
They came back with it.
And I sent you an email with the updates, with the explanation for where they're at, why they're at that, in your.
What was our original due date for this report?
I don't know, but, well,
I'm not
the due
making
date-
the motion.
The
You make
due
the
date on
motion.
the grant is December of '24, so ultimately that is the final. So the breakdown of progress is on that secondary sheet. And I can pull the previous meeting if you want to see them side by side of what they made progress on.
You wanna see that, Cynthia?
No. I just would like them to explain to all the community members why we don't have a new bridge.
I told you that, and one of their important explanations was that their subcontractors were dragging their feet or having issues.
Well, don't pay them till they deliver.
It's in the same invoice number.
Yep.
So for this, they're at task number 5, the alternative assessment period. We still have 9 total, so there's still 4 tasks to go.
Unbelievable. So they have till December 24 to do
Correct.
this?
And noting that this was a long delayed grant, but the state certainly wishes we would have been able to get started with this earlier if they had turned around before earlier. And we'd be able to award it earlier.
The motion should be made in the positive and either voted for or against.
I make a motion to approve check warrant report number C2310 in the amount of $8,919 to MSK Engineers for the bridge study payment.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion been made by Glenn, seconded by Jamie, to pay MSK Engineering $8,919 for the Benedict Crossing Bridge Engineering Study. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
One eye?
Aye.
Aye, 2 ayes.
I kinda gotta agree with Cynthia on this one, without any further explanation from them.
So it's an aye or nay?
Nay.
Nay.
Cynthia?
Nay.
We have 2 and 2. I'm the time breaking vote, and I will vote aye. What is the next?
Check warrant report number WD 24, good job, Glenn, thank you. Check report number WD 24 dated 12/15/23. Operating expenses for the Arlington Water Department, major items are insurance, Green Mountain Power, for about $1,000, the insurance is $1,300. Automotive, repairs to the vehicle, $1,100. The total amount, I make a motion to approve the total amount of $3,976.49.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion been made by Cynthia, seconded by Glenn. Pay the warrant amount of $3,976.49. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, the next one is check warrant report number 25, general fund expenses for the town. I have a question. It says Amazon Direct Pay, Town Hall, Fire Department, Highway Supplies, $1,890. What's that?
There are some miscellaneous supplies of a smoke machine that is part of the highway budget.
A smoke machine?
Yes, replacement smoke machine.
For training.
Fire
training.
department.
Oh, I thought
Another
it said
part is the
highway department, and I was like, why does the highway
I think you
department?
might have,
Okay, fire department, okay.
There was some
Okay.
tools in that, and then I got
Okay.
a roll of anti-slip tape for.
Okay, that's fine, I just wanted to know those kinds of things, okay. So, the total amount for this is 82,000 something or other, and I'll say it in a minute. The key things are, new fire department, new equipment, 3,998. Green Mountain Power, lights in various places. Municipal emergency services, scuba tanks?
SCBA.
SCUB is what it says.
Well.
So
we'll
I'm
get that
thinking, yes,
corrected
we
in
do
there.
have high water right now, but I'm hoping we're not gonna
Yes,
need
no,
scuba
they're
tanks in the
SCBA
park.
guys.
So, okay, and then, once again, insurance, $11,000. Gravel, $5,000. Reynolds and Son Fire Department, new equipment, $15,000. And, Town of White Creek for the plowing, right? We pay them up
No, that
front.
was Town of White Creek for the.
Black Hole Hollow?
Rebuild Black Hole Hollow.
Oh, it says plow.
Then I'll get that corrected in the morning.
Well, I don't know, I mean, it says,
There's two different ones on there. One's plowing and one is the rebuilding. But it
That
goes
makes
on the
sense.
same line, so it's hooked together, but it's broken down in there.
okay, so that's really the rebuilding.
Yes.
Because we haven't started, that's what I was wondering, what were we doing here? Wow. Okay, very good, thank you, Janet. I make a motion to approve check warrant report number 25 dated 12/15/23 for the total amount of $82,008.95. Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Cynthia, seconded by Jamie. Okay, check warrant report number 25 in the amount of $82,008.95. Discussion. Is the Reynolds and Son Fire Department, that's not the turnout gear, right?
No, that was something else.
Okay.
Reynolds and Son would be another multi-gas meter for
Okay.
the other truck in West Arlington, and a battery-powered electric fan.
Okay, I just wanted, if we were approving that, we didn't need to have a special.
No, that was a
meeting.
different company.
Good, just wanted to make sure.
Yep.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? And the motion passes. And that is it for warrants and orders. Any other business?
Okay, so I have, a concern about, the condition of one section of Benedict Hollow Road. This is a section just below where Red Oak Road goes off. So it's the second guardrail section where there's kind of a curve around, going around to the right. And as you may recall, the highway department did a lot of work on the ditches and just improved things a lot. And they made the ditch wider and they made it deeper. But my feeling is that it is so deep and the road is so narrow there and it's hard to see what's coming at you. I think people are gonna end up in the ditch and they're not gonna be able to get out. This has already happened before the ditch was deepened and widened. I've known this to happen in the wintertime in particular because the road is, I mean, I've got pictures here. The road, the passable area of the road it's 1.5 lanes. You can't, if there's a plow truck coming at you, a logging truck or the UPS truck, it's really hard, and you're trying to go up and you're trying to go around the corner, and it's hard to see on that, but when I stood in the ditch, the surface of the road was here. So I didn't get my yardstick when I went home, but I think that's like 1.5 feet. So I'm just concerned that people are gonna end up in the ditch. I myself would not drive that section of the road. I don't have a reason to drive that section of the road, but I would not drive it. So maybe I'm overreacting, I'm kind of a wimp with the driving, but I think people are gonna be in that ditch, and even trying to back up downhill, I think it's gonna be hard for them to get out. So I would like, I know why the ditch is the way it is, but I would like more stone to be put in the ditch to raise the level of it, so at least you have a shot, to get back onto the road, backing up, backing down the hill. So I don't know if that's the best fix. I would just like to have that brought to the highway department's attention and see if somebody can take a look at making that safer.
Yeah, I can absolutely look at that, and if you'd like to schedule a site visit with Mark, we can see if we can all get out there and work out a plan that everyone's happy with. The idea of adding stone to that to bring it a little bit closer to the road surface is actually a pretty good idea, and it fits within state code. So
right, and I know it has to be a certain depth. That's the whole point of having the ditch. But I thought you could bring it up a little bit without.
Bring it up with the stone, and that's a really cool concept that we hadn't thought about that. So I appreciate the feedback on it, and we can look at getting some more stone into that.
And there's a lot of stone in Vermont, so we can do it.
It's
okay. That's all I'm asking for. I'm not suggesting anything else other than that. And I personally wonder if there should be a sign. I would think most of the people driving that know that road. It's just, as I say, even before this version, I've known people that went in the ditch and had trouble getting out. So that would be great. More stone would be good, and maybe he'll have a better idea. So.
All right, Mr. McClanahan.
A question, and things rumble through my brain, so it takes a long time. Several months ago, I don't know if it was July or August, we voted on to do a project at the town garage up here, and then probably like a month or so ago, maybe a month and a half, there was an adjustment of like $12,000 or $13,000. What was the change for?
That was just to approve the adjustment to create the line to pay for it, to move the money to where it needed to be.
But didn't we approve $8,000 for the project, and then this was another $12,000?
No.
Okay, I stand corrected. Things like that stick in my brain, and
I appreciate that.
What the heck?
Project was 12, the movement of the money was 12.
That's why you're good at what you do. You're like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Those
And then
different.
after the meeting, I want to quickly talk with you and Nick, Cynthia.
Thank you.
Any other business? Terrific. All we have left is an executive session for personnel, property, and legal. If you can
We can probably, I'm gonna drop the legal, we can just do it by personal property. That's what it looks like.
I make a motion that premature discussion of a personnel, property, and legal issue would cause the municipality to suffer substantial disadvantage.
Okay. Motion been made by Cynthia and seconded by Glenn to establish a reason for executive session. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Perfect.